I will talk a little bit about compensation. And the thing is that when I look into HR departments, I mainly find women in training and development. I find women in talent acquisition. But when I look into compensation and benefits, I mainly find men. At least it's what I see. Right? And not only in terms of gender, there seems to be a difference. Also, I see that in compensation benefits, we very often find people, colleagues who have a background in law, in finance, or in business, and less about psychology. And I'm really surprised about this because, as you will see in this presentation, compensation is mainly about psychology. And not mainly about legal or financial issue, even though we talk about money in the end, of course, but it's not a financial thing, actually. So let me start with sharing with you different views on the relation between reward and work, how these two concepts are linked. And of course, there is the idea, the classic idea that many people on the street maybe would share, saying, well, reward is the reason for work. I work for money. I mean, that's why I work. That's the ultimate reason. But some would say, no, reward is equal to work. I will share this point later in a few minutes. It's when the work itself is rewarding. We name this intrinsic motivation. But also, when you ask economists, for instance, they would say people, employees, they add value. I mean, that's what they do, right? They add value, and the value they create must have a price, and the price is the reward. So, okay, that's another view how you can link these things. But for some other people, reward is the precondition of work. I mean, let's take my example. I'm a professor at a university. Believe it or not, but I don't work for money. Really, I work because I'm excited about HR. I'm excited about industrial and organizational psychology. I really love what I do. Also, what I do now, I really love. So, but I earn money, and I have to because I have to spend my living. So, reward is the precondition so that I can do what I really like, right? But we can also say from psychological research that once you start paying somebody for any kind of activity, the activity becomes work. So reward turns an activity into work. I mean, you find this very often. People do something just for free, because they like it. But once you start rewarding them, they consider their activity as work. We're also going to look at this. So just as a kind of a starter, there is not this simple view on the relation between reward and work. Now, Radek, you mentioned it. Some years ago, one man really shook the world of compensation. In 2009, Dan Pink did this TED Talk about the puzzle of motivation. I mean, this TED Talk is excellent, no doubt about it. And he's a great presenter. By any mean. So really absolutely brilliant. And that TED Talk shook the world. I know a lot of compensation managers who start to think differently about compensation after that talk. And what that Dan Pink said was contingent pay or pay for performance does not work for creative tasks. Right? It rather does harm. So the consequence is when you do creative tasks, and probably you do, then you should not be paid based on performance. Nice. Okay. So he said instead, if you want to motivate people in creative tasks, question is, do you really need to motivate them? But anyway, he said, if you want to motivate these people, you have to offer three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Well, okay, tell this to your people in your organization. Say, well, you don't get paid for your performance. Maybe you get autonomy, mastery, purpose instead. Say, oh, thank you. That's cool. Okay, here's the thing. What Dan Pink did is he looked primarily at motivation. He brought up the idea that reward is mainly there for motivation, which is true to some extent, but there is much more to it, which we should not ignore. And this is what my speak is all about. So to put these things here in a more academic terms, Dan Pink said, and this is absolutely clear, that the evidence is strong that for tasks who are like this, certainty of outcome is high, certainty of process is high, the people know exactly what they do, it's a repetitive task, there is no thinking in it, maybe pay for performance works perfectly well, right? But for those tasks where the outcome is not clear and the process to get there is not clear and where the scope is rather huge, variable pay or pay for performance does not really work. So, okay, that's the idea. So if you have tasks like this, maybe in production where the people exactly know what they do over and over and over again, it works. Tell people the more apples you collect, the more money you receive, works. Okay, really. So we really can say that contingent pay works best with certain tasks. No doubt about it. But now let's look at creative tasks. What's going on there? This is a creative task. And if you have kids, you will see that they don't consider their activity as work. Really not. They enjoy drawing pictures. I mean, give them a piece of paper, some pen, and they start drawing right away. So why? Because they really like it. So here is a classic experiment that you need to know. So you have children split it into 3 groups. One group is told, well, draw pictures, and as a reward, you get a good player award afterwards for drawing pictures. The second group got a good player award, the reward, just accidentally, as a surprise afterwards. And the third group got no award at all. Okay, and then they draw pictures, luckily. Okay, all 3 different groups. And then a few weeks later, the same children got together and they again had the chance to draw pictures. They had piece of paper, had pens on their table, and they had the chance to voluntarily draw pictures. And then the researchers looked, okay, how much time do they spend on drawing pictures? And what you see is that the group who got a reward, an expected reward earlier, totally collapsed. They stopped drawing pictures. I mean, they said, why should I? I don't get a reward for it. So why should I draw pictures? While the others had the same activity as before. And even when you look at the quality of the pictures judged by a jury, the quality was really bad for those who got rewards earlier. So that's exactly this idea that reward money can turn an activity into work. Yeah. And what you get in the end is something that we call extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation got transformed into extrinsic motivation. We'll go deeper into this in a minute. Also, I mean, there is this nice initiative from Pizza Hut. Yeah, since 1984, the idea was to encourage children to read books. So what they did is they collaborated with schools and implemented something like a performance appraisal, we could say. Yeah. So teachers made a target setting with their children. How many books will you read over a given period of time? So after a while, the teacher checked with the children. So have you read those books? And when the children read the books, they got a voucher for a pizza. And I mean, really, Barack Obama, he supervised that thing. He strongly supported this initiative. The idea was encourage children to read. It is wonderful. No, it's not. There were psychologists who did some research on this initiative, and they came to the conclusion that what this initiative did, it created fat children who hated to read books. I mean, look what they done the children. They preferred simple books, short books, with many pictures and big characters. They avoided reading books, actually. Yeah, they just did the easy way. They would never read Harry Potter. I mean, that's That's sick, you know. So you can ask yourself, did this thing now motivate or not to read books? The conclusion was, yeah, rewards motivate. Yes, of course, they motivate to receive the reward. So it was not about the books, it was about the pizza. And that's a real downside of those things. So and the secret behind all these things is the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And there is much said about these two kind of motivation. Let me put it a little bit more simple. Here is work and here's reward. When you do the work just to get the reward or to avoid punishment, we name it extrinsic. It comes from the outside, extrinsic, okay? Well, what is intrinsic motivation actually? I would say intrinsic motivation is when work is equal to reward. It's simply the same, right? It's when you play an instrument, when you do something in art, when you do sports, when you play with your children, you don't get money for it. You like to do it. You love it. It comes from the inside. There is no difference between here I do that to get this. The task itself is rewarding. Okay, so that's the first idea about motivation. Let's be careful here, okay? There was the idea, for instance, at Wikipedia or some institutes who manage blood donation, how you could add some extrinsic motivation to already existing intrinsic motivation. Yeah, I mean, most people donate blood for free, or they contribute to Wikipedia just for free, without getting money. So the idea was, maybe we can do this here. We have people who are intrinsically motivated. Cool, right? That's wonderful. Yeah, okay, fine. And now let's add some extrinsic motivation to it, a little bit, so that in the end we get a total motivation of this. Intrinsic motivation plus extrinsic motivation is equal total motivation. That was the idea. It sounds reasonable, but what do you get in the end? You get this. What remains in the end is extrinsic motivation. And the performance based on extrinsic motivation is significantly lower than the performance you receive based on intrinsic motivation. And we also learned from many studies that extrinsic rewards kill intrinsic motivation. Think about this experiment I was sharing with you about the children. So, what do we want? We want people who are motivated and capable, competent. This is what we want. This is what we not want, not motivated and not competent people. We want people who are motivated and competent. Now let's think about money. If you want to increase motivation with contingent pay, you have the implicit assumption that the people are not motivated. You have to push them. You have to force them, right? That's the idea. And as we already learned, in some circumstances, contingent pay can motivate people. With boring tasks, repetitive tasks, with creative tasks, it does not. How about competence? We must see, and that's a simple assumption, you don't need to be a psychologist to understand this, is you cannot make people more competent by paying them money. You simply don't. If I tell you, play Stairway to Heaven on the guitar, and you say, I could not, I can't. I say, I give you €1 million right away if you play it. You say, well, I still can't do it. Money does not increase your competence at all. So if you want to have competent people, you either develop them or you acquire the right people. That's about hiring, recruiting, talent acquisition. But here's the thing. If you want to have the best people in your team, you have to pay a decent money. But this is not about motivation. This is about acquisition. Look at myself. When I do a speech, a presentation, like now, I'm really motivated. Believe me, I'm fully motivated, really. And you can pay me additional money. I will not become better. So I'm motivated. Yeah. But to get me on the stage, you have to negotiate hard with me. because I want money to do that thing. But that's not a matter of motivation. That's a matter of acquisition. So that's something that Dan Pink missed totally. And what many companies really experienced was that they stopped pay for performance and lost the best people. So be careful here. Yeah. Or I could share with you the general advice: pay enough to get the people on board. Mainly on base pay, and then do everything to get money out of their minds, really. So if you want to have core best scientists in your team, you have to pay money. If you want to have Lionel Messi in your team, you have to pay much money. But Lionel Messi on the field will not think about money a second. Right? Please, this is a difference which is really important. Now let's turn our view to something else, the social dynamic. That's also very important. So in some circumstances, people work like this: separated, divided, everybody's doing his or her own work, right? It's fine, yeah. So, but some other people work like this. They are in a team, connected, interdependent, yeah? Only the team as a whole can succeed and not the individual. Now, that feels like this. I mean, people solve problems together. They share problems. They exchange their views. The work of one person is the input for the work of another person, and maybe vice versa. So, I mean, it's a team, right? I mean, that's how team works, right? And now here's the point. Money, compensation, can affect the way how people collaborate. And we can talk about this for hours. It's quite complicated, but there's one idea, at least, that I found very important, and where we have strong evidence in scientific research, is that once you reward individuals, maybe even based on a forced ranking, that turns colleagues into competitors. And again, you don't need to be a psychologist to understand this. I mean, look at this. This is the typical forced distribution idea that many companies have. They have their annual performance evaluation, and the managers are forced, right, to split their team into three groups: the A players, the high performers; the majority, which are the B players, yeah, and into C players, the low performers. And they are forced to stick to certain percentages: 20% A players, 70% B players, 10% C players, 70% B players, 10% C players. Okay, if you do something like this, and the people realize that only a few of us can win, they become competitors. And that's, again, something that you don't want. That's something that you don't want. Okay, so that's another idea. It's not about motivation here, and it's not about acquisition here. Here it is about the social dynamic in the team. Again, a psychological point. Now I come to a fourth idea, which is equity. Also something. Equity is something that Dan Pink completely missed. And I did an experiment where I did exactly what Dan Pink showed with the candle problem. And people who did a creative task, they got no award. And the idea from all the evidence is, if you don't get an award, a reward for doing a creative task, you are better than those who receive a reward. Now I did the following. I told the subjects that, okay, you don't get a reward for doing that task, but the other group in the other room, they get a reward. If you know that you don't get a reward, but the others get a reward, that kills your motivation completely. Because now something else comes into play: lacking fairness. And lacking fairness is one of the greatest demotivator of all times. So that's, again, something that we have to consider. So when we look at fairness in more academic terms, the idea is that contribution must be balanced with reward. Yeah, there must be a kind of it must be balanced. So it must be in line. So and in this picture you can see in the middle I named the fairness zone, right? And maybe we can say, okay, these people here, Oh, there's slight relation between contribution, reward, yeah, what they do and what they get. Right? I mean, that's something that we always do since decades. We create pay structures, right? We say, look, this is your responsibility, pay grade 3, and this is your responsibility, pay grade 5. And within these different pay grades, which reflect certain levels of responsibility, there is a pay band, and this is what you get then. Okay, so we link responsibility or contribution to reward. So these people here are in the fairness zone, and those are not. Right? And those people now must feel being treated unfair. So on the bottom right corner, there's a person who contributes much but gets less. Or the red dot on the upper left side, high reward by contributing less. Okay, this is one thing. And this is where we always focus on in compensation, linking the two things. But that's not the point. Psychologically, that's not the point. What people naturally do is they compare themselves to their peer, to other people they see, and they have an idea about the contribution of other. And when I know what the others earn, I compare myself to them. So what rather happens is something like this. You have these two people, both contribute the same, but one gets more reward. What? Guess who is demotivated? The red one. The red one here. Here, the black one. The red one. I contribute more, but get the same as the other person. So, and that does not relate to the fairness zone, right? So the fairness zone, legally fine. It's a good idea having pay structures like this. But what matters in the end is the comparison between the peers. That's the major point. So, and we know that even a little lack of fairness destroys the motivation of an affected person. Okay? So if you have a star in your team, a star salesperson, a star scientist, you know, these 10% of people who contribute to 80% of the team, the Lionel Messi in the team, and you stop paying for performance, and Lionel Messi gets the same total reward than the others, you kill Lionel Messi's motivation. That's difficult, you know. That's difficult. Now you have creative people where you say, I don't need to reward them because they are intrinsically motivated and I don't want to kill intrinsic motivation. Okay, fine. But if you don't do this, you lose them. It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma. And as far as I can tell, there is no real solution to this. So to sum up, more than Dan Pink said, just motivation, I would say there are 4 things that you need to balance whenever you talk about compensation. 4 things. And I don't tell you now how you're going to do that, really. I won't do this, okay? I just want to make you aware that there is this challenge to balance these 4 things. First is equity or fairness. Whatever you do in your compensation system, it must be fair. It's a challenge in itself. And I've seen so many companies who made very sophisticated compensation system, and they try to add more fairness step by step, and even try to make it even more fairness by adding a new policy or something. This. And what I've seen over and over again, the more you try to make things even more fair a little bit, the more unfair it gets. And you will never ever achieve full fairness. It's not possible. It's not possible. Yeah. But you have to try it. So that's one thing. But the other thing is the motivation. You were talking about this. Of course, you don't want to demotivate people, and you don't want to transform intrinsic motivation into extrinsic motivation because you lose performance. You don't want to do this. At the same time, you know that in some tasks you can motivate people with money, or you only can motivate people with money. I mean, when we think of the really boring task, the ugly task where nobody would do voluntarily. So this motivation thing is something. This is something where Dan Pink will focus on. But also the social dynamic is something. What does compensation do to the team and to the collaboration, to the sharing, and to the connectivity of teams? The social idea is absolutely key. Very complicated. Very, very complicated. And the last thing is also your compensation system must be shaped in a way so that you acquire the right people and keep the right people on board. And as I told you, this has nothing to do with motivation. This is acquisition. So I ask my students very often, are you motivated through money? Does money motivate you in business? And most say, yes, of course. That is why I do my job. I say, hold on. This is not what I was asking. Are you motivated through money? Motivation means the motivation in your daily work. What they mix up very often is motivation with acquisition. Of course you want money to do the job. And if somebody offers you more money for the same job, you take the other job. I would do so. I mean, sorry, we're not dumb. We rather want more money than less money. Of course, I think so, right? For 99% of the people that applies. So of course, money plays a role when you want to acquire people and get people on board. So this is the whole range, and you have to balance these four boards. And it's not just motivation; it's everything. And this is what I wanted to share with you. And I really thank you for your time, and I thank you for listening.